Hi there, my name is Nancy Bradford. I made a video that I was going to upload yesterday that had a lot of information on it that I was going to share before I launched into more of a chronological explanation, but it's too long. So I'm either going to have to find a way to break it up into shorter segments, or I'm going to have to redo it in shorter segments. So what I'm going to do today is just continue from um, kind of where I stopped last time, and you won't have that background information until I redo it. Some of you know my situation already because you've read my Facebook postings. I am a survivor of Zersetzen, and I explained that in the last video, so I'm not going to go over that right now. Zersetzen, if you want to look it up, sometimes spelled with an S. I think that's the Americanized version. But I'm going to start today with what happened in 2008 and with a few referrals to earlier. But in 2008, I was living my life. I realize now semi-normally, or what I thought was normal, which actually wasn't, because there was a whole lot going on in the background of my life that I wasn't privy to. One of the things I did say in my last video that I will start with here is that if you are put in the program that I and a bunch of other people are in, we are basically charged with whatever the charges are, and the charges are written up and distributed amongst other people unknown to me, but I never knew the charges were being brought against me, nor did I get to read them. And then after the charges are brought, there's a trial held. Only you don't attend because you don't know there's a trial, because you never read the charges, you didn't know there were charges, and the trial is held without your attendance, and you don't get to defend yourself or bring anybody who might help defend you. And then you're convicted, and then after you're convicted, you're sentenced to be in the program of harassment, bullying, mobbing, rude behavior, 24/7 surveillance, stalking whenever you go anywhere, major stalking. There's a whole network, a whole industry of people doing this. I don't know how many, but millions it seems. Hundreds of thousands at least. So then after that part is implemented as slandering, mocking, discrediting. There's a lot of staging and scripting that goes on with the stalking. And then many of us, it would seem most of us, but the files on us are buried somewhere, so who knows, somebody's going to have to bring out the files, which the people in government don't want to reveal. Those that are aware of all of this don't want to reveal what's been going on, because it's I think it's maybe in the Black Ops program. If it's not in the Black Ops, then it's buried in experimentation or something like that. But many of us are subjected to what is torture with high-tech electromagnetic and directed energy weapons, microwave weapons, sonic weapons, lasers, all of that high-tech stuff it's been developed in the last decades. Yesterday I mentioned the military, the intelligence agencies, the security agencies, government agencies, law enforcement, InfraGard, neighborhood people. But I forgot to say corporations have research branches. So the research branches of corporations and research branches of many universities can get a lot of money if they're involved in developing, implementation, and testing of these kinds of things. Human experimentation is never okay unless you get the consent of the person to be experimented on. And most of us that the directed energy weapons have been used on never gave any kind of consent anywhere, anyhow. They do not have our, if they have any signature on a piece of paper with my name on it, it's forged, because I never signed anything when I was awake and conscious, and I would not ever to be experimented upon. Scientists who say they're neutral, when you get into experimentation on humans and other living creatures, that's not neutral. So we have this energy weapon stuff going on, and I was not aware of it. Many of us are not. I believe mine started in the early 1990s, perhaps around 1993. I mentioned this in the test video I did, but I didn't mention it in the most recent one, so I'll say this part again because it's going back in time. On a July afternoon, and it was the last Saturday of July in the year that it was, which I'm guesstimating to be 93. It might have been 92. I don't think it was later. I think it was 93 or earlier. But let's say it's 93, the last Saturday afternoon in July. And the reason it was is because we always had our, excuse me, we always had our property owner meetings on that last Saturday in July. It was done every year that way. And we had our meeting at Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house. I always refer to the other people I talk about as Mr. and Mrs. Smith or Ms. Smith. And that afternoon, like a couple of hours after we got home from the meeting, I heard this really loud noise, like this huge rumble. And I went to the front door, and there were two military jets flying extremely low, side by side, straight at our house, straight over our house. And this is totally unusual because we lived in a mountain valley, and military jets were not flying in that mountain valley. We had the medevac helicopters come over, and we had small planes fly up from the Longmont Airport. And after they built DIA, then there started to be large planes going over at a really high altitude. But we didn't have military jets flying over our valley. Well, these two planes flying side by side, and anybody who's ever heard them when they're flying low like that knows how loud they are, straight at our house. And then as they passed over their house, they swooped up, and I didn't run to the other window because you couldn't see them over the ridge behind our house that long anyway. And it was so unusual, and it never happened before or after that. That was the only time. And my husband was home. He did hear it, but most likely he would not remember that because he's not good at remembering past events. I called the Mr. Smith, whose house we had been to for the meeting, because their house was would have been almost directly under the path that these planes were flying, just a little bit to the south, not directly, but to ask them if they'd heard it. And they had to have heard it. It was just too loud not to have been heard. And he was kind of non-committal about it. It was weird at the time. I thought, why didn't he seem more surprised, I guess? And he was non-committal about it. And but anyway, what the point of that is that if the phone records still exist, that's many years later, I can prove that I made that call to Mr. Smith from my home phone. Didn't have cell phone yet at that time. And that was the day that the military jets flew over. And perhaps that was kind of a signal that they were starting the electronic harassment. Perhaps those planes had the electronic weapons in them at that time. I don't know what the chronology is for weaponizing all of the planes and boats that have the electromagnetic, microwave, and the other weapons. So that's when I believe that all of this started. And of course, it's silent. You don't know you're getting hit with it. But that's when I started having health problems that I had never had before. And there were some serious health problems over the years. And I'm not going to do a lot about the health issues today. But I've had serious health problems. My appearance has been changed. The weight gain that I had, serious weight gain, I now know was related to those weapons. There's a whole list of things that are caused by these weapons. If you go to the website www.unwittingvictim.com, there's a list there of all the physical things we deal with. It's at the bottom of the first page, and there's a partial list, and then there's a place to click to make a longer list. So that list of physical symptoms, when I found that website, that really helped, because then I started to realize what I'd been dealing with. So in 2008, I found a unknown phone number in my husband's jacket pocket. And he was getting ready to go to the Broadmoor to a conference. And he went to that conference without me, which was his choice. And there were some weird things that happened after that. Records of movies he's watched, and phone calls, one phone call particularly from a female, and things like that. But when I tried to find who that phone number belonged to, it was a fruitless search. I wasn't able to find that out, even with hiring somebody else. And now I know that hiring those people probably was a mistake, because I don't know that they could have been part of the network. But my eyes look sleepier today when I'm filming this. But droopy eyelids can be part of the manipulation of the electronic programs. Put your whole body into the computer. But I didn't know that then. So in 2009, I realized I was being followed. I saw it in action. Perhaps they wanted me to know at that time that I was being followed. And I went home and told my husband, I'm being followed. I was on my way to the Y with my dog to walk my dog. And when I got home and told him that, he blinked. And if you've ever just had somebody respond to something that's disturbing by not responding at all, you know it's not very much fun. So I thought, well, this isn't good. I've got a problem here, and I'm not getting backup from the person that I need backup from. And I asked him about the phone number, and he couldn't or wouldn't tell me who it belonged to. It was in his handwriting, so that was pretty telling. And I started looking at phone records, and I was finding strange things on the phone records. Before, I'd always just paid the phone bill and not worried about it, because while there were things going on in our lives that seemed weird at times, I didn't mistrust him. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't fooling around on him, and I was assuming that he wasn't on me. But I did have a lot of women running up and hugging him in front of me, and I realize now that that was part of the staging of the Zersetzen. They'd come barreling up, give him a great big hug like they hadn't seen him for years, right in front of me, and leaving me standing there feeling stupid. I didn't get a hug. I didn't get a hello, how are you? I didn't get anything. And I remember who a lot of these women are. I also remember a lot of the people who used to call me by my husband's ex's name all the time. And I always thought it was weird that I got called her name so much. Well, that was part of the script because I knew it irritated me. So all those people that called me the wrong name and ran up and hugged Bob, they were in the network. They were part of it. They agreed to play the game, follow the script. So since I was questioning him, things were not going particularly well, and I started having a lot of trouble sleeping. And when you're stressed, you don't sleep well. That's a given. But by March, when we went down to Arizona, we rented a place to stay in Arizona for a month. We did this over several years. The year before, we had not gone, I don't think. Yeah, the year 2008 we didn't go, but 2009 we went again. And we rented a place in Arizona, and I was not sleeping. Even before we left for Arizona, even in January and February, I'd go to bed, I'd lay there, and I'd lay on one side, and then I'd turn to the other side, and then I'd turn to the other side. And this happened night after night. And since I was retired, I could take a nap during the day if I was extremely tired, and sometimes I could take a nap, and sometimes I couldn't even do that. So that was really weird, and I should have questioned that more at the time. And what I know now is that several of the directed energy weapons have the capability of keeping you awake or putting you to sleep. And a gentleman named Byrd, Admiral Byrd, I believe he was an admiral. I don't want to mix up the generals and the admirals because I know they get upset about that. But I believe it was Admiral Byrd, and I'll clarify that in the next video if I'm wrong. Was at some conference somewhere, and they were looking at various proposals, and one of the proposals was the weapon they called "Put the Enemy to Sleep, Keep the Enemy Awake." And see, I didn't know that I had been charged, tried, convicted, and sentenced, so I didn't know about that. But now I know why I was awake. And so I'd lay there and I'd pray that while I was laying there that I would get the rest I needed in order to function. And I guess I did, because I'm still here. So we went to Arizona. There were lots of weird things happening down there. 2 couples from our community came down while we were there. 2 couples that lived down there. One lived there full time, and one went back and forth between our town and there. We didn't see them much, which I thought was kind of strange. I mean, we were there for 30 days, a month, and you'd think that people that were quote-unquote friends that you would spend a little more time with while you were there.